Hello, 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 knockouts. Tonya Tko here. And I'm coming in live to talk about this Leaving at Neverland part one. I just finished watching part one. I sat down and spent 2 hours of my life invested in watching this thing. And I went into it without knowing what I would really expect from it. Um, ugh. I'm just, you know what? Hey, welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. So I'm a little bit confused by a lot of different things. So I went into it. Actually came on HBO. It premiered last night. And so basically, you know how they had the show Surviving R. Kelly, which came out. So basically, now they've come out with this thing called Leaving Neverland, where some of the accusers of Michael Jackson have come out in this documentary that people are saying was produced by Oprah, right? And Beautiful Chaos is saying, I've been waiting for your commentary on this. Waiting, it just came out last night. How long have you been waiting? But yes, so remember we did Surviving R. Kelly had 8 parts, right? I remember I saw on Instagram there was a young man that I had met when I was out and about in Hollywood a few months ago. And he posted up on his Instagram, believe survivors, because I was one of those people who did not believe the Michael Jackson survivors because it just seemed really implausible. There was a lot of back and forth. He did, he didn't. We were paid off, this, that, and the other, right? It premiered Sunday night. I thought it came out last night. Okay. So there was a lot of back and forth over the years. So I decided to go into this and watch it and see what it is that I would think after giving it a view, right? So there's some parts in there that are just very, very messy. There's some parts that are very, very messy. So I took some pages of notes, right? And so I decided to give this a good, honest listen to, see what it is that I see, look at their body language, watch their eyes when they're recalling a story versus when they're talking about the abuse. And you'll see that there's some discrepancy between the two. And we're talking about for both of the young men. So basically, in this particular part one, so I'm going to watch part two. I found this to be it dragged on for quite some time. I thought it was boring. I didn't think it was an exciting watch at all. I thought it really was very slow. I just thought that it was just ugh. So basically in this episode we're talking to Wade Robson and we're talking to James, quote unquote, Jimmy Safechuck. And so okay, so there are people who are saying that they didn't watch it either because of the discrepancy. They're calling it trash. So I'll say this. These people spoke 2 hours. The first part is 2 hours, right? Mm, mm, mm. They spoke for 2 hours about what things was like with Michael Jackson behind the scenes, all the attention he showed to them, and how the relationships turned sexual, right? All right. So then someone is saying questioning is not the same as not believing. And I think that it's there were some things that were revealed. So I'll say this. The part that was the most implausible to me, and I'm gonna say this right off the bat. I'm gonna discuss this right off the bat. The part that was the most implausible to me is that he says that he was a boy and that Michael Jackson was kneeling down on him performing, if you know what I'm saying, on him. This is YouTube. We can't talk freely like we used to be able to. And he says that Michael Jackson took his hands and put them on his head as he was down there. And he says, I just remember the feeling of, I remember his hair, what his hair felt like. The feeling of Brillo. I just remember it felt like Brillo. How many black people I got in the audience right now? How many black people I got in the audience? If you're black and you're in the audience, right, I want you to put up the number one. If you're black, you in the audience, put up the number one. All right? Put up the number one if you're black in the audience. All right? Now, put up the number two. Put up the number two if you have ever felt a black person's natural hair. You don't have to be black to have done this. Put up the number two if you have ever felt a black person's natural hair. Put up the number two. All right. A lot of ones and twos in here. Okay. Okay. A lot of ones and twos. Okay. Put up the number three if black people's hair feels like Brillo. Put up the number three if it feels like Brillo. Put up the number three if it feels like Brillo. If black people's natural hair feel like Brillo, put up a number three. Because you know something, one of the things that I know being black, right, is that our hair does not feel like Brillo. It may look like Brillo, but it does not feel like Brillo, right? Brillo is a scouring pad. It's made out of steel wool. It's made out of steel wool, right? Except Brillo has like this it's made from a really tough steel wool that's used to scour on pans, and they have this caked on soap on top of it so that it's really hard and tough, right? And at the time, Michael Jackson had a Jerry curl in his hair. How many people in here have ever felt Jerry curl hair? Listen, he was in the shower. He was in the shower. It's not like his hair was dry. And we're talking about a multimillionaire. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. What does it take for a black person's hair to feel rough and crunchy? In order for a black person's hair to feel rough and crunchy, it has to be dry. It has to be unconditioned, and it has to be matted, right? And it has to be in a dried out way for quite some time. And it has to be non-taken care of. How many people in here have ever felt months without moisturizer? How many people in here have ever felt a person's hair who has a Jerry curl? Put up the number four if you've ever felt a Jerry curl person's hair. Four, if you've ever felt the Jerry Curl person's here. If you've ever felt the way Jerry Curl feels. So we got Lanny, we got the specialist, we got Patina, we got Tina, we got Kelly. Hey, Kelly. We got, so we have, so, so Kathy is saying, I'm not black, unfortunately, but that is a false statement. You know MJ's did not have Brillo hair in his life. Okay, so we have a lot of people in here who have felt Jerry Curl hair, right? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now, I want you, no, I want you, listen, I want you, so we have a lot of fours in here. So listen, I want you all to be very honest. Be very honest with me, right? We're going down the list of numbers now. So we're going into number five now. Be very honest with me. Put up a five if some people's natural hair does look like Brillo. Put up a five if it does look like Brillo. I don't even know if that's proper English. If it does look like Brillo, put up a five. Sometimes it looks like Brillo. Yeah, sometimes it looks like Brillo, right? But it doesn't feel like Brillo. It does not feel like Brillo. So when this man says that he remembers touching this guy's hair, and all he remembers is that it felt like Brillo, you got me falling back in my seat because I'm like, listen, now from the outside, because first of all, listen, I've been natural for many, 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 many years. Many years. You wash your hair, especially when you wash your hair, it's so soft. It's like cotton. It's like it almost melts in your hand. It's like you touch it and it just squeezes in. It's just like whoosh. It's like a little cottontail, like a little bunny. It's so soft, right? And then Patina's saying, well, MJ's was burned. Okay, so once he said that, I kind of, not only that, there was a lot of face touching, trying to cover the mouth. There was a lot of lip biting. There was a lot of looking towards the area where you are thinking, not remembering, where you're thinking and creating, not remembering, you know? So if you listen, so anyway, so let's talk about what it is. Let's talk about what it is. So Tina saying it should have felt wet and soft, maybe greasy. Yeah, especially greasy and slick because he had that Jerry curl back in this time. And if he was in the shower, it would have felt very slippery, very oily. And so yes, oily. Kelly is saying oily. So, hey Jem, welcome in. Okay, so then let's talk about what it is that we saw. So now that's the part that made me say, however, remember, we're going to talk about this with an open heart or open mind. Okay. So basically this is the rundown for people who have not watched it. This is the basic rundown. There are two different guys in part 1. I don't know who's in part 2, but I just finished watching part 1. So there are two different guys. One is Wade Robinson, one is James Jimmy Safechuck, right? And so basically, these were little boys who happened to come into contact with Michael Jackson in different ways. One through commercials. He was in the Pepsi commercial. That was that was Jimmy. Jimmy was in the Pepsi commercial. Wade, he joined a contest in Australia to do he was like doing Michael Jackson dances. He came up on stage with Jackson and all of this. But listen to where the story gets a little strange. Listen to where the story gets a little strange, right? The story gets a little strange when the Australian boy starts talking about when him and his family decided to come over to the United States, right? So basically this is what happened. They formed these friendships. The parents were remarking about how how childlike Michael Jackson was. He liked to play. He said that he was very lonely. He would be crying. He was just like one time the boy said he woke up in the middle of the night and Michael Jackson was in the corner crying because he was like he feels so alone and so isolated. He just doesn't really have anybody that he can really open up to, right? And so Jem is saying, I did read the deposition transcript of one of the boys. It was not believable to me. Which boy did you read the deposition of? Please let us know. Okay. So things start to get a little fishy to me when so basically so this is what they said happened. So they said, "Oh, they were getting ready to leave to go back to Australia." And Michael Jackson came and said, "Listen, let me have your son for a year. He can stay with me for a year. I will change his career around. I will mentor him. I will connect him to the right people and his whole entire world will change, right?" All right. But she was like, no, no, you can't have my son. I can't do an Australian accent. So she was like, no, you can't have my son. So they went back to Australia. A few years passes by, and then the boy's father gets diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And then the father's like, his mental health is declining. He's not doing very well. And then the mother chooses that as the time to be like, oh, now I'll leave Australia and I'll leave my husband behind when he's suffering and he needs her the most. So then she's like, okay. So then she contacted Michael Jackson and Michael Jackson was like, okay. And then he arranged for a place for them to stay. Um, she that accent did not sound authentic. They arranged for a place for them to stay, etc., etc. Right? He arranged for a place for them to stay, and then this is when it starts getting fishy to me. This is when it starts getting fishy. So the grandmother says that Michael orchestrated for the mother to leave. It was he took care of everything. And then she says it was his decision. Michael is to blame. And then she said Michael is to blame for all, and then she stopped herself from all saying all, and then she said Michael is to blame for a lot of what happened in our lives. Really? Michael, it was Michael's decision for your daughter to leave her mentally ailing husband and a child in Australia to go run off to Los Angeles? And then so then they arrive in Los Angeles. This is where the story takes a turn. Listen, remember back in the days, what was her name? Misty Takes a Tumble or whatever it's called. Well, the girl who was on the table and then she fell off. So this is where the story takes a tumble, right? They get into Los Angeles and they arrive at some place called Oakwood Apartments, and it's like extended stay apartments or short term, whatever it is, right? But it's not the fancy living they were used to, right? It's not the fancy living they become accustomed to. And then someone came and was like, well, they'll rent them a car. No, the place, the Oakwood, needed the mother's credit card, right? And then they were like, well, listen, we'll organize for you to rent a car so that you could drive to the music video and all this other stuff, right? And she was like, I gotta rent a car. I have to put down my credit card. And she was like, oh, I knew things were different than other trips. And I was like, really? Really? So there was no limo, there was no chauffeuring, there was no none of that. And then what happened is they finally got a chance to meet up with Michael. But Michael had a new friend, Macaulay Culkin, right? And the boy said that he felt jealous. He was like, he felt jealous because now there was a new boy in the spot where he was best friends with Michael, cozied up and all this other stuff. And so the mother expresses, she's like, you can tell that she feels upset because she's like, my boy was coming here to be a star. I've left my husband. I've come to this new country and I'm here because of this guy, and my son is not really seeing him, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and she's like, so now I told myself anything that was gonna get done was gonna get done by my own doing. And I'm thinking to myself, you had a window of opportunity. You had a window of opportunity. Michael Jackson said, let him stay here for a year. I'll help his career out, this, that, and the other. They decided to leave for 2 years and then come back whenever it is that they chose to, expecting to still be in under the fold. But then now they said he had a new boy, right? New boy. A new boy, Macaulay Culkin. And then he said after that, there was another boy came into the picture, Brett Barnes. And then the series ends off where the mother is like, I notice a pattern. My bad Australian accent. I noticed a pattern. He would have a new boy every 12 months. Now, listen, let's not sweep this under the rug. Let's not sweep it under the rug. Why was Michael Jackson hanging out with all these little boys? Why was he hanging out with these little boys? This looks fishy. Remember, we talked about many years ago. I mean, not many years ago. Not many weeks ago. Just about 2 weeks ago. We talked. We talked about. We talked about the elders and how they failed so many of us. That was an Indian accent. That wasn't Australian. That wasn't Indian. I did my best. I can't do the Australian accent. Just sounds so sweet. I can't mock it. I can't mimic it rather. All right. So, why was he hanging out with so many boys? Remember we talked about our elders failing us. Where were the people around Michael Jackson who were like, this is not a good look, MJ? They have the minds of the adult. They have the minds of the adult. So why was nobody pulling his collar like, this not a good look, Michael? You hanging out with all these boys? What's going on? Right? And then all right. Listen. So Sonny say they have been accusing a bunch of black men innocent till proven guilty, but Michael, hell no. I don't know. We don't know. But this is Miss Shia is saying he had the mind of a little boy. And listening to him talk and seeing his mannerisms, he was very childlike and childish. However, there are people coming out with accusations. So do we just disregard the accusations, or do we step outside of how much we loved his music or loved his art and really take a look and see, you know, something is amiss here. Something is amiss here. And then so let's talk about this. So somebody said, so everybody around him was a yes person. So let's talk about that. One of the biggest differences between this series and Surviving R. Kelly is that in the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, they interviewed managers, studio people, people who visited the studios, employees, family members. Well, I'm talking about of R. Kelly. They interviewed family members of his. They interviewed people who were there at the time who could vouch for the fact that he had a thing for little girls and that he was seemingly inappropriate engaging in seemingly inappropriate contact with girls, as well as having a bunch of beds around his studio, right? So there were neutral parties. Some people who also implicated themselves in the wrangling of young girls for Kelly. So now in these situations with these boys, with this leaving Neverland, right? In the situation with leaving Neverland, there's nobody else being interviewed besides the accusers. In order for something like this to take place, there had to have been enablers all around. Where are the enablers? Where are the family members? Where are the people? Because listen, Michael Jackson is not here to defend himself. That's one of the hugest difference. Michael Jackson isn't here to defend himself. And so Rishi is saying, what kind of grown will sleep with random kids he doesn't know? And so Kareem, there was also millions in settlement payouts. Okay, so then there were payouts as well. And so Tiana is saying, I feel like those boys are lying because why didn't they speak out with the other children? They were in favor of MJ when he was alive, but now that he is dead, they are singing another tune. Who else? Who else was there? Who were the other accusers? We need to do some more research. We need to do some more research. We need to find out who were all of the people that accused him. Who were these two people then if they were not? He paid 22 million to keep them quiet, guilty. You know? And Shelly is saying you have to blame everyone. You have to blame everyone in this situation. And so Mr. Rob is saying, gotta be some truth even if we choose not to believe it. Sometimes people settle to save money and to protect reputation doesn't mean guilty. Jenny is saying black men leave white men, women, and kids alone. And Kareem is saying, I don't believe settlements indicate guilt. And so Neverland is up for sale, so their timing is coming out as questionable. How interesting. Kelly's saying, good question, but they had a chance to put it on the record at the first trial. Not a good look, though. Okay, so listen. And Mr. Rob is saying, I fault the parents the most. Listen, in a situation where there is sexual assault of an adult and a child or anyone, the only person to blame is the person who commits the sexual assault. Mr. Chandler killed himself. What are we talking about right now? I missed something. And so someone is saying someone will buy Neverland. They'll have to hose it down first. The parents were brainwashed. Evan Chandler. So Evan Chandler was the first accuser. He committed suicide. That's not a good look. So let's look up. So Evan Chandler is one of the first accusers. I'm sorry. I think it's a little bit fishy. The father of the first accuser's dad committed suicide. The parents were money hungry. Corey Feldman, Jordan Chandler, the first kid. Okay, well, you know what? Listen, I think that this is something that needs to be looked into. I'm sorry. Eight boys. How many boys were there? 8 boys accused you of sexual assault? And we're supposed to sit here and say, okay, every single person is willing to put themselves on the record and perjure. How many boys was it? How many boys? And we're talking about people being willing to put themselves on the record and perjure themselves. There are 209 people on here. 210 thumbs up the video, thumbs up. If you don't see the thumbs up button, you can close the chat for a second and then click the thumbs up. So I'm sorry. And so Geek is saying, does anyone think Oprah is a sellout for the culture? She hasn't questioned Weinstein yet. All right. So Corey Feldman is defending MJ as well as Macaulay Culkin. Really? Really? Interesting. Thumbs up the video. There's 210 people in here. 50 thumbs up. Keep going, keep going. All right. So I want to find out how many boys it was. Do I think Oprah is a sellout? I believe Oprah is who Oprah is, and is she a sellout? A sellout for creating this or producing this documentary? And so Top Model is saying 13 boys. Was it 13? We're going to have to find this number. Was it 13 boys? Something don't seem right. Something don't seem right. All right. Something does not seem right. And on that note, so Van City is saying, I only know of 4. Where are the others? And Aquarius is saying 4 boys accused. And Patina is saying, no, it wasn't 13. So it was 4 boys? Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. Hey. All right. So I just wanted to discuss this real quick with you all. I'm going to continue watching. I'm not going to call these boys liars. I'm not going to call them liars because only them and Michael Jackson would know, and Michael Jackson is now dead. Michael Jackson can't defend himself. And there were no other people inside of this documentary. 4 paid, 13 accused him. It became a circus. I don't know. I don't know. On So Shelly is saying there's a doppelganger in here. A doppelganger for who? For Michael Jackson? All right. Wait a minute. Robson made a music video on Neverland Ranch several years after his death. Wow, wow, wow. And Fanny is saying, that's right, a dead man cannot tell tales. So listen, we're going to get out of here at the half-hour mark. I just wanted to come out and discuss part 1 with you all. If you're seeing this video after, so make sure, listen, before I go, hit the thumbs up button, hit the thumbs up. And Tony is saying, I'm a ride or die for Michael. I choose not to believe this. God only knows. Listen, don't ride or die on somebody else's penis. That didn't sound right. That did not sound right. Don't ride or die on somebody else's body part. Don't bank yourself on somebody outside of you who you don't know. Keep an open mind, because when you go into this with a closed mind, you stop yourself from being able to consider. You know what I mean? Could it be possible? And the answer is yes, it could be possible. To say that it's impossible is irresponsible. Excuse me. To say it's impossible is irresponsible. All right? And And on that note, listen, it's about 30 minutes after. I'll come and jump inside the comments with you all because I want to keep this video short enough. Oh, HBO is being sued. Well, you know what? Let's talk about it in the comments. Leave your comment below, thumbs up, and like the video. It matters for the YouTube algorithm, and I'll see you all below. Tonya TKO, and I'm out. I'm gonna do the next part.